If you have the issue of sounding like a robot when you speak English and not really being your true self, well, then today's lesson will be perfect for you. Now imagine this. You're listening to someone tell you a story that goes like this. Yesterday, I went to the supermarket. I wanted to buy bread. I couldn't find it, and I came home. That's how many learners sound because they haven't mastered the flow of going from phrase to phrase more smoothly. Now that line, it could have actually sounded like, so yesterday I went to the supermarket because I wanted to buy some bread, you know? But the thing is, I couldn't find it, so I came home. Now, what made a difference there was not advanced vocabulary or grammar. It was actually those linking words and connectors and fillers that we often overlook. Words like, you know, well, like, anyway. And that's what you will learn and master today so you can sound more natural when you speak, and all in a really fun way with Ethan and I in this real life conversation. Let's get started. Ethan, I have discovered the most powerful phrase in the English language, and it just so happens that it is actually a filler expression, I would say. It's not a filler word, it's a filler expression. It has multiple words in it.
Language is powerful, right? It has the capacity to sway nations, start war, to create peace.
And I think it's something about the sound of it because you got to say it right. And I have a clip here that I want to show you that I think illustrates it perfectly. Do you know Trevor Noah?
I do. Yeah, he's a really famous South African comedian, right?
It's the most amazing use of English I've ever come across in my life. Just that one word alone, just the strength of that. Nah mean. Do you know what I mean? You nah mean. It sums it all up, doesn't it? It's just, neither question nor statement. It's just like, why have we been wasting our time with syllables for so long? I don't understand. It was a crazy day today, you know what I mean? Yo, that shit was crazy, you know what I mean? It just flows, it's magical.
And that's a filler expression, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like you're talking and say like, breakfast is amazing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The whole phrase he said at the end, I don't know if learners could catch that, but he said that shit was cray, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like that shit was crazy. Shit was cray. That's another slang that you take the Z out of crazy.
And there's connected speech in you know what I mean when you turn it and morph it into nah mean.
Yeah.
Nah mean.
It's like we've talked about, right, with how I'm going to becomes I'm gonna becomes I'm gonna becomes I'm-a. And it's the same thing happening there, that it goes from you know what I mean to you know what I mean to know what I mean.
And there's variations too that I've heard. So know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? Or see what I mean? I guess see what I mean, it's kind of harder to compact it so much, but there is, don't you think? They're all serve the same function, right?
Or just, right?
Right, yeah. That's something that you'll see a lot with discourse markers, which are these filler words that some people overuse it, right? There's that classic example of Justin Bieber doing that interview. He says like 100 times.
It's funny because go and there's tweet say kind of like on my that's really and it's this kind of my kind of
Yeah, I think that's something in American English that we have this relationship with certain filler words like that if you're overusing it, people maybe think you sound less intelligent. So it's not obviously a reflection of someone's intelligence. It's a bit like spices in a recipe, that when you use them in the right way, it can totally make a dish. It really can enlighten the senses eating that thing. But if you overuse them, just like if you use too many spices in a dish, it's inedible almost. So you definitely need to find that balance to where you're not using it to the extent that you're abusing them, but you're using it enough so then it's a really powerful tool for you to sound, like we say in the intro, right? More natural and confident when you speak. And I think also, at least when you speak with natives, it feels like you're sort of directing the conversation more. It feels easier to connect to you. Right.
There's something about it. It's just natural, right? Because you connect sentences and you're able to imply certain things that if you don't use it, for example, the filler word look, when you use it before starting a sentence, like you're getting a person's attention, right? Like you're about to say something that you want to check if they agree with you. So you say, look, no. look, I'm going to do this. And then you come back and you do that. And then by saying, look, maybe the other person will respond by agreeing or disagreeing. You don't need to ask, do you agree, or any of that, right? It's a simple word. It's very fast. And there's many of these in the English language. Now, just one more thing about the clip I shared with Trevor Noah, that there's actual full sentences that even work as filler words, filler expressions too. So I said, see what I'm saying, don't you think? Or right, am I right? But there's one that I really like also that I wanted to share here, that is, do you feel me? I used to say that, and I stopped because I noticed that it sounded a little bit like gangster. I don't know. Do you feel me? No?
It's very colloquial.
There you go.
Yeah.
So now there's several expressions like these, and I bet that there will be many more in this lesson. And for all of you guys watching and listening to us, if you want to be able to use these expressions that you're learning in this lesson fluently, and not struggle to remember them, because that's something that happens when you consume lessons passively, just like laid back on YouTube, for example, or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. One thing that happens is that you'll gain that knowledge for one moment, but very likely the next day, next week, you'll forget it. So if you don't want to let that happen, if you want to actually retain all the knowledge, all these expressions that you're learning, and be able to use them in real life conversations, you should know that the best way to watch this lesson is on the RealLife app, because the app automatically saves all these words, all these advanced expressions for you to practice them later and add them to your active vocabulary forever. We're going to leave the link in the description below so you can unlock this lesson right now for free, or you can simply search for RealLife English on your favorite app store, and we'll see you there. So what's funny? Like in this podcast, we use a lot of fillers, a lot of filler words, and I was watching a lesson the other day with 𝗥𝗃𝗃 and you, and I noticed that when we're telling stories, that comes out more naturally, more often, right? So I have a clip here of 𝗥𝗃𝗃. It's very short, just a couple sentences, but it's 𝗥𝗃𝗃 using many words and a couple sentences, but it sounded natural. Like it's even hard to catch it if you're not paying attention. So I want to challenge you to just see if you can catch all of the words, the discourse markers that she's using here.
I'm gonna grab a pen and paper.
Because I had this situation where, it was in Finland. I was in a small town. And there was a moment when I literally felt like my heart dropped to my stomach when I got a message on my phone from my bank in Ukraine that my card got blocked.
So I got 4, but I think there might have been more than that.
Okay, so which ones you got? Which words? Okay.
She used like a few times,
mm-hmm.
right? I'm not asking was another one. Literally, which actually I'm doubting if that's a filler word, but I think that we do use literally a lot as an emphasizer, right?
Because if you remove it, the context it still makes sense. Like sometimes you literally remove the word literally, like I just said. Okay. Sometimes you remove the word literally and it works.
It literally makes no difference.
Yeah.
And the last one, which is definitely a filler, is
there we go. That's what I wanted to see if you would catch.
Yeah, and in preparing for this lesson, I was thinking about that. That's one of the biggest giveaways of a non-native, because in every language there's different. It's this filler word that we use when we're thinking, right? And in English it's or and I know with Spanish speakers, for example, it's like eh. So when you bring that over into English, it sounds really unnatural. If you're speaking English and then you stop to think and you're going eh instead of or it's like automatically just something is a little bit off there.
Mm-hmm.
What would it be in Portuguese? The I'm thinking sound,
or eh, eh.
So it's a bit more similar to English, at least the
Mm-hmm. So that's the thing about hesitation. Like there's different sounds that you can make, and like is another one. There's another word that you can use for pausing. If you're hesitating and trying to find the right word you want to use, like is another one of those, and that's why people use it so much. Along with and you said that non-natives, that's one way that you can tell, like if you're speaking with a non-native because of that. And it's interesting, but this is learnable. because I say and I don't know
You
why.
practice it, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't practice it. It's like let me practice and like I don't do that.
But you have to like consciously, because it's so natural to use the thinking sound from your native language, especially because oftentimes you are like taking a moment to actually like think, right? Because you have to take more time to process that my brain is switching to English, right? I actually just went with a Brazilian friend. We went to like a speaking event it was like a Catalan speaking event because he's wanting to learn Catalan. And when we left and he switched to Portuguese right away, he's like, oh man, I'm like exhausted from like thinking all this time in Catalan. It's like needed a break.
Yeah.
So it's like this thing that we're processing more, and it's natural that you would default back to the thinking sound in your native language. It's something you'd actually have to actually actively practice thinking in the target language in English.
Oh yeah, now that you mentioned, you said actively practice, and I remember actually learning one of these hesitation sounds from a series from How I Met Your Mother. Do you remember 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗵 from Robin?
So whenever she does an interview, you have to drink every time she says "but."
That night, we found out just how much she said it.
But
It's classic. But
yeah, I knew of it, but I started saying more after watching that. So, but I picked it up naturally, right? So I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things that you pick up and you don't know that you're doing it, but you need the input, right? You need to listen first. It's not gonna naturally occur to you. It's like, oh, I should say or but or.
It was something I always wanted to actually ask you. Is it because like in Portuguese, so like these discourse markers, they exist in every language, right? And like Portuguese, there's so many nice ones. There's like, you know, like pois é, entendi, tá ligado. Like the one like tá ligado. Like I was listening to a podcast the other day, interview, and the person being interviewed was using it a ton, like a lot. And I think it's a bit like the example you brought, know what I'm saying? You know, kind of a little bit more slangy way of asking, do you know what I mean? But you have all these really nice discourse markers. Like, do you remember, was it a thing where you kind of like learned their equivalent in English? Was there an actual active sort of learning like that? Or is it something you just picked up from observation and it kind of came more naturally like that? Like, I'm just curious for people who are learning, is this something they should actually think about what discourse markers they're already using in their native language and maybe try to find their equivalent in English and start using those more? I
think the best way to learn discourse markers, because they are useful, and we can talk about their usefulness too. I'm interested in exploring, you know, all the subtle meaning in them, but you learn them by actually using them because it's so subtle that you don't think about it. And if you don't think about it, learning by translation doesn't help. I don't think I've ever done that. And the best way to really learn it is by input, by seeing people using it, and it just makes sense. You're like, oh, that's the perfect sound, you know, to insert in there, and it changes the way the listener will interpret what you're saying.
When you're listening to something or watching something in English, you could actually give the filter of, you know, one day when you're listening to something of, let me pay attention actually to what sort of discourse markers they're using, what sort of these filler words they're using. It's just like sometimes they're used so much too that you can notice it. Like I mentioned the podcast the other day, that the person was just saying "tá ligado" so many times that it's like became very clear for me is like what that means just through the repetition. So if you notice that there's these words, and I think it depends from person to person, different people naturally have their favorites, the ones that they use the most. When you start to pay attention that like, okay, these words, they're not really like a part of the overall meaning, but they're being used a lot. And then you can start trying to apply that to your own speaking, right? So it's like the living your English parts is really important, and actually putting the filter of like, okay, today I'm going to pay attention to discourse markers while I'm listening to this thing.
I remember moments when I used a discourse marker in English when I was speaking Portuguese. It was very brief, you know, it was, people didn't catch it, but I caught it. It's like, oh, what am I doing? Because it's just natural, right? Like it's one of those sounds that they serve a purpose, and you don't even see them as a word. It's just a sound. So to actually illustrate what I'm talking about here, I have a little bit of a game that I thought we could play that is going to be an improvised conversation where each sentence that you say and I say will start with a filler word. I've set aside here the words that we will use. And for all of you guys listening to us, if you're not watching this lesson, you can do that on a RealLife app, and you're going to be able to see the words that we are using. Let's do this. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
So Ethan, what'd you have for breakfast this morning?
I was going to go to the gym, so I decided to make myself a hearty breakfast of some French toast and yogurt.
Honestly, I hate yogurt.
You see, that's a problem with you people who don't eat yogurt. You're just totally on the wrong track. You probably just haven't tried a good yogurt yet.
Anyway, but did you like it? Was it good?
Basically, it was delicious. It made the morning so much better.
Look, you need to try cereal. Cereal is the best. I know you haven't had cereal ever because you're stupid.
I mean, there's no need for insults, is he?
Now, don't get me started on French toast, by the way. You also ate that, right? That French toast suck.
The thing is that it's got a lot of protein, so it's a good breakfast before the gym.
Actually, it does have some protein. That's true.
Well, Izzy, let's let bygones be bygones and just agree to disagree.
There you go. So you can actually start sentences easily with filler words, and when you do, it might change. Like it'll change the way the other person will interpret what you're about to say, right? Just as I was explaining before. So, for example, the expression "the thing is" or "thing is." How would you explain that? When would you use that?
I'd say it's when you're wanting to bring attention to a certain point or a certain argument that you're about to make. So I think a lot of filler words might have a similar sort of use. But if I'm saying the thing is, if I'm telling you, Izzy, like the thing is, it's kind of like, Izzy, pay attention because I'm about to tell you an important piece of information that you need to know for this conversation we're having. Like
we were saying many things before, but let me say the things that is actually relevant that we've been ignoring maybe. The thing is, right? And actually, I said to actually agree with you because I was disagreeing. I was saying the French toast suck and the yogurt, but then you said it has a lot of protein. I was like, actually, right? Because I was changing my mind or just like think about something new.
Kind of give a new piece of information or to show something contrary. You could use it in the same way. You know what? You're right. Actually, you're right.
Now, there were many there, and they can all be used to start sentences.
You even said, now there were many there?
I said that?
You used now, yeah.
Now, what is your favorite? Is there a discourse marker that you say a lot?
I wouldn't want to say favorite, but I know I've been given the feedback before that I use kinda too much. And I think it's almost like sometimes when I'm a bit timid about something I'm about to say, and I don't want to be forceful in saying this is the truth. It's using kinda to lessen it, to make it lighter, to not step on anyone's toes.
How about a discourse marker that annoys you?
Well, I could say that when people, the ones we talked about earlier, like if people use it tastefully, then it's okay. But when it's every other word, when it's, of course, like the example you gave from the interview with Justin Bieber, where it's really being overused, it sort of butchers the person's message because you're just getting annoyed by them using that over and over again. But I don't think there's any that I don't like that particular discourse marker. I think it's more the overuse of them.
Now, one category of discourse markers that I think can really enrich sentences and the way you want to say things is the longer phrases. Stuff like, at the end of the day, let me put it this way, right? Some people categorize those still as discourse markers because you use them. Sometimes it's not necessary. Like if you say it or not, doesn't make so much of a difference. Again, they add that subtle meaning. So I have a short list of these expressions here that I just wanted to see if you can tell me the exact meaning, because I think I know what they mean, but just want to clarify.
Yeah. I might categorize these more as connectors because sometimes they hold more of a meaning than discourse markers. So discourse markers, they do have like the small modification that you're wanting to call someone's attention, or you're wanting to, I don't know, to maybe like soften the message and things like this. But these connectors, it's usually because there's a certain way that you're connecting it to something else that was said, or you're marking the beginning or the end of something, for example. And they're very commonly used, like if you're having to give a speech or a presentation, or depending on which one it is, oftentimes even in normal conversation, right?
That makes sense. So there's all these different ways to call these words, like connectors, linking words, discourse markers. All right, anyway, so let me start from an expression that I just used here, at the end of the day. So that's not literally at the end of the day, right? When would you use that more specifically?
At the end of the day, I think when we want to point out what's the most important piece of information, right? So if we took the game we played before, you could say like, at the end of the day, French toast has much more protein than cereal.
The conclusion.
Kind of say like,
right?
you know,
So
when
logical.
you take all the arguments into consideration, this is kind of like the main point.
How about let me put it this way? I guess it's more obvious, right? Like let me put it this way. It's like you say that before you find another way to explain something. Is that it?
Yeah, maybe if I like explained something to you and you didn't really fully get my meaning, and usually not because it's like you didn't understand the English, but you didn't understand my message or my idea that I'm explaining to you. So I could say, let me put it this way, meaning that I'm going to explain it in a new way to see if now you understand it. Or maybe if I'm trying to say I'm giving you a piece of feedback and it's like obvious you're just not getting it. And it's like, let me put it this way. It's kind of like I'm going to say it in really blunt terms so that it's really clear for you.
In other situations, it can be more aggressive too, right? Like if you're saying something, the other person is just ignoring.
Yeah,
you can say that too.
I could imagine if you're trying to be subtle with your kid, for example, that they need to improve their grades. And it's like, let me put it this way. If you don't improve your grades, you're not allowed to go out with your friends this weekend.
How about the longer one? I mean, don't get me wrong, but
when you're about to present something that might be a little bit controversial of a belief,
someone could misunderstand you, basically. And if they do misunderstand you, you can say, let me put it this way. There's another one here that is similar to the thing is like, here's the thing. Guilty. I'm like, I do say it all. Like, here's the thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing. You're saying it as if it were a bad thing to say that.
Well, yeah.
I think that it can make you sound a lot more natural if you say the thing is, and rather than just saying what the thing is itself, just saying like the main sentence, right?
So that's what here's the thing is, right? Like you're about to, similar to at the end of the day. And finally, because these are collocations, right? Like all these words, they exist, they make sense, but when you put them together, they become more common expression, a collocation. So it's just that, Yeah,
that's more informal.
And it's barely a collocation, but people say that those words like together like that so often. Like it's just that,
Yeah, I feel like it's a way to restate what you just said. I'm trying to think when we would use it. It's just that
it sounds a little bit like excusing yourself, or it's kind of apologetic.
If you're inviting me to do something this weekend, it's like, it's just that I saw that it's going to be rainy. I don't really want to go outside this weekend. I want to just, it's been a long week. I want to hang out at home, read a good book.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're kind of going to, someone says, it's just that, then you can expect them to maybe be giving you an excuse coming
trying
next.
to bow out of something in a way that's not disrespectful. It's true. Anyway, so that is more informal, but some of those other ones you could hear, I think, in a more formal presentation, for example, right? Like at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's more formal ones. Like, I think also it's really common to say, first off, so when you're maybe going to be giving a list of things or several arguments, you might say, first off, French toast is better than cereal because it has more protein.
Actually, does it? I don't know about that. Maybe. Anyway, but what else would you say is formal and acceptable as a discourse marker?
So there's like the first off, and the other side of that, if you're finishing off, you might say like in conclusion or in a nutshell, as a way to mark that you're going to be finishing off your statement. Another one I like is that I probably use quite a bit is, on the one hand and on the other hand. So it's to present two different points, right? Especially if they're probably two options or two things that might kind of go against each other, right? on the one hand, cereal is really quick to prepare. On the other hand, it isn't so healthy for you if it's one of those ones that has a lot of sugar in it.
So anyway, about this thing of informal versus formal expressions, I think it's mainly the hesitation ones, the ums and like, that I would want to avoid in more formal context, right?
Thinking of, in formal context for sure. Yeah. In informal context, you don't want to overuse them, but on the other hand, they can be really valuable to buy you time if you're thinking, and it sounds a lot more natural if you're doing an than if you're doing an a or an or any other variation that might come from your mother tongue.
There's all those adverbs that I think sound pretty good. I mean, they add meaning, but they can be overused, like basically. I have a friend who says basically for every other sentence. You say like basically, like stop saying basically. What does that mean? What do you want to say? Right? Actually is another one. What else? Honestly.
Well, so like, so as we were saying that the context is really important of if it's formal and informal. So I tell people pay attention to that. And also if you're writing, a lot of times you'll use these connectors as well. These more formal connectors, but again, the context is everything. So that's something that's important to pay attention to, because these discourse markers can make you sound a lot more natural. But if you're using a really formal one in an informal context or vice versa, then you might not sound so natural. And Izzy, a final one that we didn't touch on that I think it would still be considered like a filler or a discourse marker is these kind of colloquial expressions that we'll use to refer to another person. So for example, like man or dude.
Oh, yeah.
Like, man,
there's many
just
of those.
The perfect weekend. Or dude, you'll never believe who I just saw at the supermarket. So it's one of these things that's completely, it adds nothing really, but it's like calling your attention, right?
Yeah, and there's some, I don't know, some sense of camaraderie added to the sentence when you say it, right? Like there's bro. I think Gen Z uses a lot of bro these days. I don't like that.
Or depending where you are, if you're in the UK.
Yeah, sorry if you're Gen Z or anything. Like I think you guys overuse bro, but that's okay. We all overuse some words, right?
But something I was thinking about this in English is that we don't really have great ones to refer to women. They're kind of like all masculinized, right?
Yeah, there's
like
girl, right?
It doesn't sound great to call a girl man, obviously, or dude. But in Portuguese, do you find that there's more terms like this that you would use maybe for both sexes or specifically for a woman?
Interestingly, I think it's the same situation. Yeah, because you have mano, which is dude, you could say, or bro. Actually, mano is literally bro, brother.
Yeah.
Right. But no, yeah, that's true. Cara, Cara is our producer. T is also Brazilian. He could confirm that women will say cara to
use it, right?
Their girlfriends, right? Like a cara.
So Chi was saying that it depends too a lot on the region that you're in Brazil. Yeah.
So maybe it's the same thing in the US. But there is these days, I think it's become more common to say amiga, which is friend, literally. So nice. We're like, hey, friend. It's the same in Spanish, right? Amigo.
Yeah. In Spanish, like, because the most common one in Spain, only in Spain, I think, is like tío, right? And for a woman, you can't say tía. And people use it a lot.
Anyway, one word that comes to mind too that is not the same as like a dude or man, that is boy. Because you're not saying boy referring to the person, right? Like, but it is a discourse marker. How would you explain boy?
It's an emphasizer, right? So it'd be like, boy, that was a great podcast. But I wouldn't really use that. To me, it sounds kind of like old fashioned now. Boy, oh boy.
Oh yeah, well, if we say it that way.
It's like when you're excited.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy.
But anyway, there is this category of discourse markers to refer to people. It's true. I
like
thought about that.
Colloquial fillers like that.
Nice.
You brought up at the beginning, maybe this is like a way for us to end coming full circle, but the Trevor Noah talking about African-American English. And I think sometimes African-American women might use sista, like sister. But again, it's like, I don't know your group. If like people in your group of friends are using that word, then it's great, but it's like one that I wouldn't feel comfortable using.
All right, Ethan, this was a lot of fun. It's really nice to talk about things like words and expressions that I actually use and real life English. You know, I feel that the clip I showed in the beginning is one that I always come back to, and it's nice to, you know, bring it here for learners to learn with, to share it with everybody.
I like that you started that phrase with "all right," because that's another one we forgot to cover. All right,
That's
Ethan.
true. There you go.
All right, Izzy.
Oh, you hear a lot of them. Like I bet that there's many that we didn't talk about, but that we used in this podcast.
Could go listen again to it and catch all the times that we use discourse markers and talking about discourse markers.
Anyway, it's so nice when I read messages that confirm, you know, this feeling that I am sharing something that's more personal, something that's meaningful for me and that helped me learn English. And we got a message from a fan called 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗵 wishing us a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I just wanted to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to you for changing my life with your incredible English lessons. Your videos were more than just tutorials. They were my gateway to a new world of confidence, opportunities, and connections. I still remember the struggles I faced when I first started learning English. I was mocked for my accent, struggled to understand even basic conversations, and felt like giving up countless times. But your lessons gave me the hope, motivation, and tools I needed to persevere. Today, I can proudly say that I've come a long way, and it's all thanks to your dedication, passion, and generosity in sharing your knowledge with the world. Thank you for being my guiding lights, my mentors, and my friends. I'm honored to have the privilege of learning from you. Wow.
Well, I'd say I'm honored to get such a message. Thank you so much, 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶𝗀𝗟𝗃.
He used heartfelt, or she,
Heartfelt.
sorry, I'm not actually sure. I'm not familiar with the name, so sorry if I got that wrong. But heartfelt gratitude, that's a really nice collocation.
It's an adjective for there's gratitude, but then if it's a heartfelt gratitude, it's a gratitude that you feel in your heart, right? It's quite literally.
They also said I was mocked for my accent. What does it mean if someone mocks you?
Somebody makes fun of your accent, makes fun of you, they're mocking you, but in a mean way, in a bad way, in a negative. A lot of times, right?
There's a nice expression in English, haters gonna hate. What does that mean?
There will always be people who will hate on the things you do and the way you do things. So ignore the haters, because haters are going to hate. That's what they do.
When you say you're using hate in that way as like a verb or a noun, it's like to criticize, right? It's the people who are critical of you. But keep fighting the good fight. And really, it's our honor, it's our pleasure to get to create lessons for all of you learners out there, and hopefully it is making an impact on your English. Thanks so much for joining us today, guys. If you are enjoying these lessons, a free way you can support us is first of all by hitting that subscribe button and the bell down below on YouTube, and also giving this video a like. That really helps the platform to know that you're enjoying these lessons, so that it will recommend it to more learners like you who will also get a lot of value out of them. Same goes if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other streaming platform. You can follow us there so you don't miss a single new episode, and you can give us a 5-star review. So this, again, is really helpful for us to reach more learners like you. And if you're not listening to this or watching it on the Real Life English app yet, what are you waiting for? It's absolutely the best experience you can possibly get with this podcast, because you get an interactive transcript, vocabulary flashcards, and writing exercises so you never forget the new words and expressions from every single new episode, and so much more. So you can check that out for free by hitting the link in the description or looking up Real Life English in your favorite app store.
Now, Ethan, see, now that's a discourse marker. Now, Ethan, thank you so much for joining me today again. And guys, remember that no matter what divides us, that which unites us is far greater. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Today, we'll learn how English accents can be one of the most fascinating things about the language. They add so much history and personality to how we speak. So in this lesson, I challenged Ethan to guess the country of the accent he was hearing, and I also tested his ability to imitate some of the most iconic ones, like accents you have probably struggled to understand in movies, for example.
Y'all got squirrels in Colorado?
We had a lot of fun exploring the pronunciation, what makes each one of these unique, and so this is going to be fantastic for you to improve your listening comprehension of real-life English, the English you'll actually experience in everyday situations. So let's get started.